What's going on, everyone? It's the Raving Wolf, the Reformation Keegan Dmitrovic, and today I'm doing a reaction video, and it's going to be a reaction video of the Undertaker ranking his Mount Rushmore of smaller wrestlers. So the Dead Man now has an account on YouTube called 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway. Please subscribe to that because there's some really good, interesting content and stories that we've never heard from in the 30 plus year career of the Undertaker. So we're gonna watch this. I'm gonna react to it. It's my first time watching it, and I want to see who the Dead Man has on his Mount Rushmore. So let's get to it. All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's see what the Undertaker's Mount Rushmore is for smaller wrestlers. But I must have an energy drink host because I love these things. Let's get started.
All right, today we're going to discuss the Mount Rushmore of the small guys. And when I say the small guys, I'm talking about the 6 foot and under guys. Some of these guys I had classic matches with. I always preferred working with the smaller guys. I always felt like I could tell the better story with the big guy against the little guy. But it takes somebody special to be able to work against somebody my size. So I put a lot of thought into this. And it wasn't easy to leave a few names off, but I only give four. So here's the start of the list. Coming in at number four, I'm gonna put in AJ Styles.
Okay.
I have always been a fan of AJ Styles. Somebody that I always wanted to work with. I was fortunate enough to have my last match with AJ Styles, and that was because I thought that much of his work. Originally, we finished up, and our last match was, or my last match was a boneyard match, but originally that match was supposed to take place in a wrestling ring, and I was really looking forward to that because, again, AJ Styles, I've never seen him have a bad match. And
They don't
I was
exist.
just, like I said, just always a fan and was so excited when he came to the WWE. Um, just a phenomenal talent. He is what he says he is. He is the phenomenal one. And
Still wonder
what
how that
he
match
brings
would
his
have
A game every single time. My number three, I'm going to go with the Crippler, Chris Benoit. Again,
Wow.
a wrestling machine. Just could go. He was that guy. He was not a big guy at all. But when he got going, man, you forgot. You forgot that he was such a small guy in stature. Yeah, he was jacked, but man, he was not that big a dude. But he was like a Wolverine in the ring, from bell to bell. You had to have wheels to keep up with him, and the things that he did was solid, strong, made sense. I didn't get enough chances to work with him. I worked with him a few times and had some really, really outstanding matches with him. I did know when I worked with Chris that I needed to put my track shoes on because it was going to be go time. Um, at number two, there's no doubt about my number two, the Olympic gold medalist himself, Kurt Angle. My goodness, what a freaking animal that Kurt was. I mean, not only did he win a gold medal in the Olympics with a broken neck, he made the transition into professional wrestling, which is really difficult for a lot of amateurs to do, and to exceed at the level that he did. Just an incredible talent. Um, Backstage interviews, I mean, he had it all. He had personality. He had, he's a ring technician. He could go. Man, I have so many fond memories of the matches that I had with Kurt. Um, just one of those guys it was a pleasure to get in the ring with, and just turn it loose and let it go. And you knew that Kurt Angle was going to be right there, uh, and pushing the pace. And you know, small guys were always my favorite to work with. They just were, because it was easy for me to tell a story, and that's what I do. I tell stories. And the big guy against the little guy, it was just a classic. But you had to be able to go. If you and these guys that I've named so far could all hit that extra gear and chop that big redwood tree that they were in the ring with down. Redwood being me. It was really really special. And before I reveal my number one guy, I need you guys to go down to the comments and let me hear your Mount Rushmore of the smaller dudes, okay? I know you're going to be pissed off at mine or you're not going to agree with me, and that's what's so cool about this. You get to choose yours, I get to have mine. Y'all can tell me how I'm wrong, and just put your Mount Rushmore of the small wrestlers down there, and we'll compare and we'll just see how many of us think alike. Now, my number one small wrestler of all time. And this was, I had to leave some very, very, very good names off this list. But my number one is none other than the incomparable Latino Heat, Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, man.
Eddie could
One of the best.
work with a broom and make it a good match. He had the ability to keep people mesmerized, not only by his athleticism and his wrestling acumen, but just the things that he did. His promos were on point. He knew how to make fun of himself. He knew how to get heat. He knew how to be a babyface. He was the epitome of the undersized wrestler. Lie, cheat, and steal. Eddie did it all, and he is my number one on Mark Calloway's Mount Rushmore of the little dude.
Well, I think that was a great list. He's right though. In a lot of ways, you're always going to admit somebody. Like, yeah, you could have so many other guys in there. Like, yeah, you could have Rey Mysterio. You could have guys like even Dean Malenko. There's so many, but you're always going to have to leave some people out. So that's always a fair saying. And I'm gonna give my Mount Rushmore to it. I think it's very similar, except I would have Ray Ray in there somewhere, uh, personally for me. However, this Mount Rushmore that he gave is indisputable in my opinion, due to the fact that you have four guys who have really helped change the game in wrestling. I mean, AJ Styles. I've never had the pleasure of meeting him ever as a person, but I've watched AJ since I was a kid, since he started in TNA, and he always wowed me with everything he's been able to do. Because yes, he can hit good moves. Yes, he can hit great high spots. He can hit fantastic things from an athletic perspective. But he has so much psychology, and he is such a rich storyteller that separates him a lot from the pack. And then I was really surprised that he mentioned Chris Benoit, because Chris is obviously a polarizing name, but I'm not going to get into any of that because he was mentioning Chris just based off of ability, and Taker and Chris didn't work a lot together. They were on SmackDown for many years, on the same show during the 2000s, but they never crossed paths. At least not much. I think the only pay per view match they had was Rebellion 2000. I think that's correct. And Chris gave him a diving headbutt onto his leg. I remember that, which was cool. But to me, they were two SmackDown juggernauts that just they were ships that just passed each other. But I think Taker and Chris for a WrestleMania would have been huge at some point. It could have been at WrestleMania 19. Take Chris out of the tag match and Taker out of the handicap, put them together. You could have done that, or you could have done it later. Maybe even Mania 22, or if circumstances aligned after 2007, maybe after some point after that. Like I remember thinking WrestleMania 27 was in Atlanta, and Chris was residing in Fayetteville, and maybe that would have been the year that they put Chris in the Hall of Fame, and Chris comes out and says, "You know what? I think this is going to be the time I retire." Or maybe he retires the next year, maybe in 2008 because of concussions, but he's going to come back for one last match, maybe 3 years later, and says, "You know what? I want to go out on my terms. I'm going to go out the way I want." And The Undertaker is the one guy that I've never hurdled over, and he's one guy that we have been classified as neck and neck in the locker room, and also for our contributions to the company. And we have never really squared off on a big stage. So if I'm going out as a performer, I'm going to try to take down the streak. And then you have Chris trying to take down the streak at Mania 27. They have a fantastic match, which they would have, and Chris retires after that. That could have been something really cool. But yeah, Taker and Chris Benoit definitely would have been a classic. And then he mentioned Kurt Angle, which, I mean, how can you not? But a lot of people forget that Kurt is only probably like 5'9", 5'10". And you don't notice that because he is so believable and so intense with everything he does that height doesn't matter. And I think that's a big misconception that a lot of people have in wrestling is truly height does not matter. You have guys like Benoit, you have AJ, you have Kurt, you have Ray, you have Taz, Jericho. There's so many that are between 5'7" and 5'10", 5'11", and you don't need to be any bigger than that. You truly don't. Height is an anomaly in wrestling, and it doesn't need to dictate who's good and who's not, or who gets pushed or who doesn't, or who's at the top of the card or who isn't. But Kurt was one of those guys that height didn't matter because he was a legitimate wrestling machine, and everything he did was so believable. And Taker and Kurt had so many great matches. Like I remember they had one in September of 2003 before the Iron Man match with Kurt and Brock. That was amazing. And then they had No Way Out 2006, which in my opinion, is a 5-star classic. And then they had one, I think, in early March of '06 on SmackDown, which was the rematch. That was just as good. So Taker and Kurt, though, for WrestleMania should have happened as well. I think for Mania 22, that probably would have been my main event if I had it my way, because I think that was the biggest match at the time that they could have done. Even though it happened at No Way Out the month prior, I think it should have been at WrestleMania. And I think a lot of people also hold that sentiment. And then number one was Eddie Guerrero. I mean, I think Eddie's in my top five ever. I actually have Undertaker as the best ever overall, but Eddie was so good. And like Taker said, he could cut a good babyface promo, good heel promo, could be either role. He could make you laugh, he could make you mad, he could control a crowd, he could wrestle a great match with a broom. I mean, that's because there's people who really get wrestling, and Eddie Guerrero was one of them. He knew how to make every little thing count. And again, a guy who was not very tall, he made he made you believe, and it didn't matter if he was wrestling Brock Lesnar or Rey Mysterio. No matter the size difference, Eddie Guerrero made everything even in the match and made everything like Kurt so believable. Like when Eddie would give Brock the Three Amigos, you could believe it because Eddie had so much fire and so much intensity. And fire is something that every pro wrestler needs to have. And it's something I've also been working on as a talent too. And Eddie just had so much of that fire that you could believe anything he did. And also an Eddie and Undertaker program would have been one of the best among the history of wrestling if it happened. The closest they really got was Armageddon 2004. They did a fatal four way with also Booker T and JBL, which is a great match. And the exchanges that Undertaker and Eddie had in this match were incredible. They literally had like a 4-star mini match within this Armageddon match, and just to see a glimpse of that makes me wonder what would have a singles match on pay-per-view have been like with these two. And I think it definitely would have happened if Eddie wouldn't have unfortunately passed away so soon. Like Eddie and Undertaker for a main event of WrestleMania would have been one of the biggest I think they would have ever done. Let me know what you guys think about that. But I'm gonna come back with more of these reaction videos too. I want to see if they keep getting some views and some likes. Hopefully, we can get the subscription numbers up. So please, for these videos, like, share, comment, view, and subscribe. It truly means a lot to me. It means a lot to the channel, and I'll hopefully be back soon with some more good content.